than just stealing gears. It pulls you in and doesn't let go.
Okay, hello. Welcome to the Carousel Podcast. I have with me today Braxton McCoy. Welcome, Braxton.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we're going to talk today about Mike Lee and what's going on with the public lands sale debate. And you're the perfect guy to talk to about this. But before we get into that, who are you, Braxton? Introduce yourself and tell us how you became a Twitter poster.
Man, that part happened by accident. But I guess formally I'm a horse trainer, although I've been doing a lot less of that lately. So it's starting to feel fraudy to say that. I mean, I'm still doing some of it, but it's not exactly my full-time gig anymore. So I sell beef over at pasturepeaks.com. And I do a lot of advocacy stuff, and I wrote a book, and I'm working on another book. So, and I do a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, I do some public speaking and things like that. So I guess I'm living more of a nerd life now than I used to.
Nice. What was your book called, and what was it about?
It was called The Glass Factory. It was about when I got, it was mostly about recovering from being wounded in Iraq and that process. It's not really a war book. I would never want to give the impression that I wrote some kind of story about heroism or anything like that, because that's not what it is. If anything, it's probably a lot more of the opposite of that.
So you were GWAT veteran.
Yeah. I got wounded in 2006, hit by a suicide bomber, and then it sucked. It took quite a few years to get back to normal. And then part of the reason I'm riding less horses is I just broke my back again it's probably getting closer to 2 years ago now, but so keep hurting myself. I'm getting too old to be breaking stuff.
Falling off of the horse, or
I got bucked off, and I don't even know how many times, but this one, sometimes it goes okay, and sometimes you break stuff.
Right. It's like sometimes you're totally fine, then sometimes you're like not. You're like dead.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, we could talk about this all day, but let's talk about what we are here to talk about today. So all I know about this is that there has been this sort of notion, there's been a meme on the internet and just in general of, you see the map of federal lands, right? And you see this US map of federal lands, and there's something extremely noticeable about this map in that in the East, the percentages of land owned by the federal government is very low. It's like 3%, 4% in places like Connecticut and Virginia, or I don't know exactly, but as you move further west, you see that percentage skyrocket to where you're in Utah and Nevada, and I think Nevada is like the most. It's like 95% is owned by the federal government. So that's really all I know about this. I don't know really anything else besides that this week Mike Lee, who was, his Twitter handle is based Mike Lee. So he clearly, seems like he's an on the level guy. And I've heard of him before. I've heard he's great before all this. I know we're against him, or you're against him in this, but I'm just saying beforehand, I'd heard he was good. And then he is now raising this bill to try to sell off huge amounts of federal land and privatize it in the West. So that's where I'm at. Maybe you can say what I'm getting wrong, or maybe just tee up the situation.
Okay. Firstly, anytime if you're looking at the map that's the red has the red on it, like you're talking
Yeah.
about,
Yeah, the red map. Yes.
that map includes national parks, Indian reservations, monuments, wilderness areas, so on. So the map itself is pretty disingenuous. There are
okay.
better maps out there, but that one is
Yeah.
kind of
So
BS.
here's the map that we're talking about.
Yes,
This is the
that
map
one.
that everybody shares.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would, just right off the bat, I would question anybody. I would question the agenda of somebody who is using one like this, especially when they're yelling about how they're not trying to sell off Yellowstone, but then the map includes Yellowstone.
Okay. Yeah, I see. All right. Yeah, I just Googled federal lands map, and this is the first thing that came up. I don't know. I don't have any like agenda.
Yeah.
This is just what I've seen before. Yeah, that's all I know.
Yeah. As far as Lee himself, I've been trying not to be personal about it. I don't want to impugn the guys, or not impugn, but I don't want to be too crappy to the guy. But on this issue, he's lied since he's been in Congress. This has always been his goal, and he's always sold it on lies. I've got an entire list we could go through of the lies he's told different people over the years. And so for example, when he and Ted Cruz did the Public Lands Initiative, I think that was the second time he had tried to sue the federal government to transfer these lands back, and to use their language, cede these lands back to the state. And this is partly why they use the term federal land, by the way. It's meant to conflate and make you feel like it's owned by some nefarious bureaucrat down the road, when really it's land that's held in public trust for the everyday citizen. It's like a dirt bank, so to speak. The Public Lands Initiative was, like I say, meant to cede this ground back, to use their verbiage, back to the states, and it was sold to these people. When I say people, I mean the constituents of places like Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, etc., as that under the premise that local management would be better, because they knew that if they had said, we actually are trying to sell all of this off, no one in those states would have went for it. So they lied to him and said, no, this is really about conservation, really. And the BLM just does such a terrible job managing it. We can do it better. Don't you think a guy down the street could handle, this canyon in your backyard better than some guy in DC? But really, Utah's constitution, basically all of these mountain states have a provision in their constitution that says that the land has to be managed to the highest productivity in terms of monetary value. So if it gets transferred to the state, they're essentially required to sell a lot of it off. Some of it they won't be able to, because it may be more productive as rangeland because it's too far away from any kind of developed area. But anything else that could make more money by being developed is basically has to be sold. And they knew that when they were doing this, but they also know that the everyday citizen doesn't know that these provisions are in the constitutions. And I would also point out that the funding that they get from the land goes to education, to public education. So basically they want to sell your birthright off so that some green-haired person can try to turn your kid gay.
Okay, so all right, so what is Mike Lee's exact proposal here?
Notice how it's changed. It's changed multiple times. It's kind of hard to pin down. But if you read between the lines on this guy, and I talked to him about this in his office in 2017, I know what he really believes. Okay. That's why I used to be in a public land advocacy organization. It was kind of lefty, but it was the only thing we had. And that's why I was on the Hill, was advocating for this back then. If you read between the lines, he wants to sell it all. In fact, like Ted Cruz famously I believe it was the 2016 presidential debate, said, we here in Texas think the federal government owns way too much land, and in Texas they only have 2%, and we believe that's 2% too much. That was the push they tried to make. So that's Ted Cruz was echoing that line that Ted Cruz said. I guarantee you came from Mike Lee. I would guarantee, obviously I can't prove that, and so I'm speculating, but I would almost guarantee it. Why else would Ted Cruz be talking about land in Utah. He has no connection to land in Utah, you know.
Mhm.
So his plan is to sell it all off, always has been. And that's partly why he lies to everybody about what the main goal is. Like here he's telling you, oh, this is for affordable housing, you know, which note that they use terms like affordable housing that have both more of like a legalistic version, like affordable housing from a kind of legalistic perspective means it has to be, somebody has to be on like welfare or Section 8 or whatever. And then that comes with, you know, they've got to have like mental health centers and food nearby and all of this. And then colloquially, affordable housing means like cheap, something a young person can buy. So they use terms like this to muddy the waters as well. You know, notice that he'll try to tell you, well, young people are going to have to flee Utah because they can't afford a house and so on. And then he's, you know, the Secretary of HUD is talking about Section 8 homes. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouth over here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's because they can't get on the same page. I think it's because they want people confused.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as what it is exactly, the proposal, I don't know. You can look at Greater Lee posted this earlier, right?
Yeah,
out of the
I
bill.
think I saw that. Yeah. Here, let's pull that up. Yeah, so Greater Lee, he is posting like bits of this bill, basically, right? He's like highlighting pieces here. Yeah, let's look at this.
Yeah. So while you're pulling that up, when this bill first went through the House, the claim was that it was only 500,000 acres between Utah and Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
And then some other organizations like Go Hunt and Onyx and Meat Eater and people like that dug through and found that it was actually 1.5 million.
Mm.
And then now over here on this bill, now it's like, at first we were being told it was maybe 2 million, then maybe 3 million. Now it's like, well, it's only 3.3 million, but the exact total is not listed anywhere.
Well, and I think Lee said somewhere that it's like, actually, there's no limit. Right. It's like they could actually sell off as much as they want. Yeah, this was another thing that what did it say? Oh, yeah, he says the maps you're seeing about the sale of public lands are virtually meaningless because the bill does not require the government to tell us which lands for 60 days. Actually, that's not what I meant to find. He had something about how it was like unlimited. Anyway, so, okay. So what are these? Here's like a bunch of truths and lies that Mike Lee is saying here. So what are the things that he's being disingenuous about? You said that you had a list of those.
Oh, I have a list of stuff he's been disingenuous about for years, but I would actually on that, I'll pull up Charles Haywood's thread because I thought that was
here's
pretty
Charles
good.
Haywood's thread. Yeah, I'm seeing this here. Let's analyze the truthfulness. Here we go. Okay. Most parcels will never be conveyed. Select for disposal, not more than... Okay. So yeah, talk us through this stuff a little bit.
Okay. So in the first claim that the bill prohibits the sale of any national parks, monuments, wilderness areas. Now you want to know, you want to be careful with wilderness areas because there's wilderness areas and then there's capital W wilderness. And these people will use those two interchangeably, and then they have totally different protection levels. Not totally, but they have different protection levels. Like it is going to be very hard to sell something like the Bob Marshall, but there are wilderness areas listed, at least on the one map that floated around for a while, which again, we don't know if that map is even true. So there's one. Claim 2, let's see, most parcels are eligible for sale and any disposal requires. Okay, this is the biggest one. The claim that I would argue this is the biggest one. The claim that he's making that local input will be needed in order to sell any of this off is actually not true. Ultimately, it comes down to the federal government. It's going to be DOI. Like they can just push it through. And a thing that a lot of people don't know is we already have laws in place for this kind of stuff. So you can work with the BLM and they do this. So let's say you're near to a suburb and it needs to expand around Phoenix or something. They'll use FLIPMA and then develop an RMP a range management plan or something like that, and they'll be able to buy. They'll say, "Okay, we need this piece of land near to this area for this specific purpose," and they'll work within there, and then it gets approved. It'll go to a public comment period, and as long as everybody says, "Yeah, this seems like it would benefit our area," then it goes through. So the claim that this doesn't happen is just wrong. It's just not true. So we already have things in place to do the things that he's claiming he's trying to do with this bill. And another thing outside of, actually, let's go back to his. Sorry, I get wound up about this.
Are you looking at Haywood's claims, or are you looking at?
Yeah, I just lost that. By the way, when I said FLPMA, I was just ranting there. That's the Federal Land and Management Act.
Yeah.
God damn it! I bumped my phone and lost it.
Well,
so
here it's on the screen. Look at the screen. We're looking at it right here.
I'm not a very good tech person.
Claim 3: lands with high recreation or conservation value are off limits. The bill protects public assets and wildlife values during any evaluation. So this is just to be clear here. This claim, we're looking at a true and false chart of a true and false chart. So the original true and false chart is Mike Lee's true and false chart, whereas he is responding to criticisms of himself. Now, Charles Haywood has gone through and done a true and false of his true and false thing. So it's funny already for that reason. But basically, we have Charles Haywood arguing here against Mike Lee and showing that the claims he's making are false. In the second claim that we just discussed, Mike Lee, who is again in favor of selling these lands, Mike Lee is the senator from Nevada. Who is Mike Lee again?
Utah.
He's a senator from Utah. Yeah. So he is in this previous thing. He's saying that local consultation is required for sales of the land. Charles Haywood goes through and says that's actually not true at all. There is no real local consultation necessary. So here in Claim 3, we're moving on to the next one. Charles Haywood says something like, lands with high recreation or conservation value are off limits. The bill protects public access and wildlife values during any evaluation. So that's a claim that Mike Lee is making. Charles Haywood says false, and totally so. None of this is mentioned anywhere in the bill. So none of this high recreation or conservation value are off limits. That's not actually in the bill in any place.
Yeah, and then later on, it mandates. It basically puts a number on how much timber must be harvested. So that's runs completely counter to this. And then we already, as far as land management goes, this stuff, there is already a thing in place called a multiple use mandate. So the land is supposed to be used for the betterment of the American people, for recreation, hunting, fishing, riding your pedal bike, whatever it might be, hiking, extraction, should be timber, minerals, this kind of thing, oil and gas even. And then for, what's the third one? Anyway, so we already have a system for this. The problem is with other administrations in power, they abuse it. And then a lot of the hatred towards these organizations that we deal with now also gets pushed. It's misdirected anger. What you're really angry at is the weaponization of the ESA, the Endangered Species Act, or the weaponization of the EPA. And so I would also want to say, well, didn't we just win? Aren't we living in a post-Chevron deference world now? So the EPA shouldn't be able to grind things to a halt as easily as it is in terms of responsible extraction. Why are we pushing this now? Why don't we just reorganize? We're in a perfect position right here to reorganize the system and use the stuff that we already have, the tools that we already have at our disposal. Use those rather than just, go through this. And I would say the reason that it's going this direction is obvious. It's because he's trying to sell it off.
Yeah. So I've noticed on the Haywood thread, I think the thing that people are saying is, oh, well, this will allow BlackRock to buy up all this land, basically. Is that something that you're worried about happening?
Sure, I wouldn't limit it to just Blackstone, who was a top 3 or 4 contributor to Lee in his last race. I wouldn't limit it just to that. I would. I'm being conspiratorial, I guess, but I think this is probably more they're trying to do. They're trying to create little Aspens all over the Mountain West for Yellowstone Club type stuff. And then after that, I think there's at least a little bit of a payoff being done to the tech right. I mean, why do you think you have Elon out there tweeting about how there's vast areas of the United States, American West rather, that need to be paved over with solar panels, and then you move on to data centers. Think of how much money you save if you're running one of these huge data centers by sticking it in, say, northern Wyoming, where it's cold most of the year, windy. I don't know how much it costs to cool those things down, but I'll bet it's a lot. So if you can move it up into a high plains climate like that, you're probably saving a ton of money. The other thing that you can kind of do with that, this is conspiracy speculative stuff, I guess, but the other thing you can do is if you need to build a little H-1B city out there with your own little nuclear reactor and data center, then it's kind of tucked away. It's not in people's face every day, so it's sort of hidden. You've just got like Lee City, and it's just a bunch of people from Mumbai wandering around. And from a conservative perspective,
yes, H-1B H-1B housing owned by BlackRock. That's right. What you want to do these things. Yeah, sure.
And then on this, I've been arguing for years, and I've got a lot of shit about. I apologize if I'm not supposed to curse. I've got a lot of crap over this.
You are.
For years now, you've got to think about how politically dangerous it is for a conservative movement to try to import a whole bunch of people into low population, high landmass states. I think the total number of voters in Wyoming is somewhere around 230 to 300,000.
Yeah.
You put 50,000 people who are going to vote as one single block.
Right. Yeah. That is dangerous. That's true.
And some people have tried to argue that this won't happen. Well, look at Colorado. Did it get more red? How about Arizona?
Worst state in the country, Colorado, because of that. You're right. That I definitely agree with. I'm certainly concerned with the BlackRock thing, and one of the things that Mike Lee has said is that it limits the purchase to 2 parcels per person. But as Charles Haywood points out, yes, so what, man? All these, BlackRock still buys a bunch of single family homes one at a time. It's, you can do it there's ways around that, I think, is what Charles Haywood is saying. There's nothing to prevent a large institutional shareholder from, using shell companies or whatever it is or just waiting until the first person buys it and then buying it from them, right? There's nothing to prevent them from actually taking control of all of this land, which we definitely don't want, right? And I'm definitely sympathize with that. Oh, sorry, what?
Dude, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No.
Add on to it. So far as I can tell, there's no language in the bill that prohibits foreign investors from buying.
Right. Yeah. Sure. And that should definitely be in there. But I guess my question is, what can you do right now on these lands?
This is where the everyday guy goes, shoots his gun, goes fishing, rides his horses, hikes, takes pictures. I don't know, does some other kind. Maybe hippies are out there smoking pot. I don't know. It's just kind of whatever people want to do. That's what they do. I've had people say you can't even go on these lands whenever you want. Man, there's like a 16-day limit on BLM that you can only stay for 16 days. But in order to skirt that, all you have to do is move your camper like 3 miles.
Yeah. Right.
So like theoretically, I think it might be 12 miles, but either way, theoretically you could go sojourn for a summer and do whatever it was that you wanted to do. I would argue that it's the freest place in the country.
And you can hunt on these lands, right?
Sure. Not national parks, but
obviously not national parks, but you can hunt on just the general federal lands. And you can, but you can't, the one thing you can't do, you can't like build stuff.
No, you're not supposed to, but every little kid builds tree forts and all sorts of crap out there. But
in there. Yeah, sure. Okay. Right. So we want to preserve this so it's not just like owned by BlackRock, more or less.
I know this is an emotional appeal. and I wouldn't even pretend otherwise. But I think we have to be very careful. Americans have a unique conception of liberty that I would argue is directly tied to the existence of this place. And I think you need to be very careful meddling with things like that. Even some kid who grows up in New York, you know, he if you asked him what it means to be an American, most of the stuff that he would describe in terms of like values and things like that are stuff that was born in the American West and still exists out here. But from the Ohio River Valley to the 49ers in San Francisco, that's kind of where we became a people. And that stuff, it is sort of still there. I mean, a lot of the land is there, and the ability to go out and explore and wander around. I think you need to be very, very careful taking that away from people, lest we become a population of bug men, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I did a bunch of sort of traveling alone in Northern California for like a month. I just like drove around. And I remember there was a distinct difference between the federal lands and the state lands. There were like the state parks, and then there were the federal BLM lands, and they were like very different. Like what you could do on them was different. The whole like setup was different in them, because in some of these BLM lands, or the federal lands that we're talking about, they have like, some of them are national parks, right? Then some are state parks, which is another thing. And then some are BLM lands, which is like yet another thing. So like, what is the difference between those? Do you know like what the difference between those three things is?
It depends. As far as state lands go, it depends on the state. Either way, you're going to have more restrictions on state land almost every time than you will on BLM. The way it might be best to describe this by the way we ended up with BLM as such is we were creating a Forest Service, and they went out and designated all of the areas that needed to be preserved so that we could extract, recreate, etc. And then anything that was not listed on that original Forest Service sort of survey ended up getting pushed into grazing acts, homesteading acts, things like that. And so they opened up a couple of homesteading acts. So on that unallocated stuff, or unappropriated, I think might be the word they use. And then people came out, built their homesteads, these kind of things. Those homesteads then broke this large chunk up into sort of various large chunks. But if you think about the stuff that didn't get homesteaded, then they had to figure out what to do with it. So they moved it into this other agency, and that's the BLM. So when someone says we need to homestead it, we've tried that a couple of times. Most of this stuff you can't homestead because it's an annual precipitation rate of like 7.5 inches. You know, it's like 160 acres. You might be able to raise on a lot of this stuff. You might be able to raise 5 pair of cattle off of it. You are sure as hell not raising a family on 5 pair of cattle. So it can't even work in the way that these people want it to work. And then there's also no water. I mean, the Colorado River system is down like 150 feet right now. We're out of water. We're water squeezed as it is. The soil is stressed because of it. We're a single prolonged drought could cause potential problems. There's just really no way to do it. And so that's how you end up with the BLM as such.
I see. Okay. So it's sort of these federal lands are places that aren't super good for like settlement anyway. This is like the custodian of those lands.
That would be, yes.
The original reason.
That would be more BLM. In a lot of forest areas, you could theoretically to build, and then that's what they're wanting to do. I think it would be, in my worldview, I would view that as a sin, but you could theoretically in a lot of these areas. And I not to be pushy about it, but I really hate the term federal lands. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to be like some lefty, you know.
No, it's fine.
But public lands they're ours, yours, mine, the kid in West Virginia who hasn't spent time on them yet. They're land held in public trust that's managed by various.
Yeah, so we shouldn't say federal lands. We should say public lands.
Yeah, I think when Mike Lee started pushing the term federal lands, or at least he was the one that I saw push it first, 2012 or so. I think that he was doing that because he wanted to rile up the base with this idea of, government bad. No one wants a bigger government, and this is government. And then he also wants you to conflate that with Indian reservations, military bases, stuff like that. So an Indian reservation, you can't just go recreate on unless they allow you to. Various tribes have various rules, and it's obviously a military base. That's going to vary by base, but you can't just walk on one, certainly.
Well, and also, isn't there like the thing I remember from going to the state parks in California is it was like, it actually really sucked because you had to like make a reservation for this campsite like a year in advance, and you could get this thing, and you had to have this certificate, and like, oh, you couldn't go here and you couldn't go there, and you could bring this thing here, and oh, here's your little like piece of firewood that you can like bring over to your little like thing that we've made for you to light it in, and blah blah blah. But I think what you're saying is public lands are not really like that. Like you can kind of do more what you want on these things. Like you can put your tent wherever you want. You can like shoot things. You can like kind of do whatever you want.
I mean, you can't take a crap within 250 feet of a riparian area, and there are some, you can't shoot fireworks off in July. There are some limits, but there's not a lot.
Yeah, okay.
But you don't have to pay for it either. When you go to a state park, obviously,
you got to pay. Mm-hmm. It's like a huge amount of money, and it's like $80 to like get like a camp reservation. I was like, this is like not wilderness. I was like, this is like not really that like good. But I think I remember like there was a BLM thing right next to up in like the redwood forest. There's like a BLM area, and that was like you could do whatever the hell you want. You just show up, like you didn't have to reserve anything. You could kind of camp anywhere. Yeah, I don't know if that's true, but yeah.
I don't know if it's BLM right there or not, but yeah, you can go around look for Bigfoot if that's what you want to do, man. Right. Just go enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay, well, so why is this people seem to be very, very passionate about this. Why do you think people are so passionate about this issue?
Ultimately, I think it's because this is nothing but a loss for the everyday American. We lose on both ends of this, no matter what. Now we've lost this ability we've lost, first of all, the crown jewel, and I think a very important part of our culture. And then we've lost the opportunity to live like, basically we're turning these into the king's deer now. Right now we don't need a Robin Hood. We have a great gig going here. We can go, okay, you got to buy a fishing license, but somebody's got to maintain, ecosystems here. We lose in the end. It's stolen from us, goes to a wealthy person, and now all of a sudden we're Europe. And a thing that about that as well, like right. Think about, I think in Scotland, one of those countries right there has a right to roam law. And my understanding is the right to roam law is in place so that people have somewhere to go, and everything is privatized. So essentially the government has now forced private landowners to allow people to just wander around their properties. So that's how they've solved for the inevitable
problem. Yeah, right. Yeah. Interesting. So what would you think about that? A right to roam law?
Well, we have that without a law right now. I think
right. Exactly. We have that without a right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'd be much worse for us if that happened. And as far as why people get impassioned, this is kind of the last thing that we still have that they haven't stole from us yet. And it's not expensive. This claim that it's expensive is ridiculous. PILT paid out $621 million. PILT is payment in lieu of taxes, which is a system that's set up to pay local governments revenue for the land.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Because they can't collect property tax. PILT paid out like $621 million last year. So if you broke that down to the average taxpayer, what's that going to be, like $1.50 a year or something? I mean, the idea that this is expensive is absolutely absurd. So it's just theft from us. And in a lot of ways, it's a redistribution act, and it's stealing from the regular person to give to billionaires and investors and things like that.
Yeah, and it's basically right. It's then these things become privatized, and then there's a fence around them, and then you can't do anything with them. Did you follow the whole Bundy's controversy? Because that involved like grazing. Was that on federal land that they were grazing their cattle? Was that related to this?
Yeah, it was a BLM allotment. I want to be careful because I don't want to get anything wrong, but my understanding of the situation, and please correct me if I'm getting it wrong, the Bundys ran about 800 head of cattle on this allotment. Because of the the ESA, Endangered Species Act, they came in and said, hey, your cattle are killing these desert tortoises, which are endangered, so you can't run as many on this allotment anymore. And I believe they cut their number in half. And I'll tell you, any small ranch that has its number that it can, the number of cattle they can run cut in half is not going to make it. That's 50% of rev in 1 year. You're going to be in trouble. So again, this is just my understanding. Ammon did a sort of science project, and he built these rocks or made these rock figure things and put paint on them. So they were basically shaped like a turtle. And then he would put paint that would stay wet on them or chalk or something. And he would mark every time a cow had stepped on one of these rocks that were shaped like a turtle. And he went through and said, hey, one rock got stepped on here. I've got like 50 of these things. I don't believe you. And they said, piss off. We're cutting your allotment anyway. So then Cliven told them to piss off and just ran his cattle as normal. That's my understanding. And then he didn't pay his animal unit monthly fees, probably out of spite. I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but probably out of spite. And then they said, hey, you owe back taxes for all these years. And they tried to take his cattle herd.
I see. And so that was he owed the federal government money to graze his cattle on the federal lands, because that's like one of the ways that they get value out of them. Right.
And I think the case he would probably make, I don't want to seem unfriendly to the Bundys. I think the case he would probably try to make is, why I stopped paying you because you guys were trying to bankrupt me anyway. So, piss off. But yes, what was really the Obama administration. I'm pretty sure it was Obama that was in office when that happened. Whomever it was, pretty sure Obama really blew that out of proportion. All of a sudden we find out that we've got like BLM SWAT teams and helicopters and all this kind of stuff. It was very poorly handled. It looked like we were about to have another Waco situation is what it looked like. So I can understand a thing that came out of this though, that is really bad, is it was a more nuanced issue. And most people have never worked with the BLM. They've never ran cattle on them or even had a property that they needed to get an easement or do a water project or something. So now every time the BLM comes up, people just see the Bundy incident, which I would agree was handled very poorly.
I see. Because the Bundy incident sort of paints BLM as bad guys.
I mean, and I think a lot of everyday Americans see the BLM through that lens, even though I would argue that's not representative of the BLM really.
I see. Okay. So that's like one of the things that somebody like Mike Lee is going to like play up. Like, hey, you want these BLM bastards trying to screw your cattle. Trying to screw your cattle, literally, literally and figuratively. So shouldn't we deprive them? Like, well, let's reduce the BLM, right? Is kind of the thing. Although it's not like if these lands were private, the Bundys would be able to graze them either. They definitely couldn't, right? That would be out of the question.
Yeah, I mean, unlikely. We've got, some lease stuff that's on private, but it's, not likely. And certainly Clive Bundy's outfit was not going to be able to buy the allotment. I don't know what the size of the allotment he's running on, but I'll give you kind of an overview. One that's not too far away from me, a friend has an allotment, and it's I think 450,000 acres, and it runs about I think he runs 1,000 head on that one. I think I can be getting these numbers wrong, but the point of bringing that up is to say that's how many acres it takes to raise these cattle. That's why we're in this situation, because a ranch can't make it this way. You know, you're not going to buy 450,000 at 3,500 an acre and then ever pay it off with cattle. That's never going to happen. So it's not going to the rancher and the people who seem to think that. I can understand. I think their heart's in the right place. I can understand why they might try to make that argument, but it's not possible.
So what do you do this? Is this something you do? Are you a cattle rancher yourself?
My business partner and I would never call myself a rancher. Let me put it. I consider myself a humble peddler of beef.
Okay.
I'm not in no way a real producer. I've been a horseman for my whole life, and I have cowboyed a lot of family in that world, and then riding colts for big ranches. You know, you're around it a lot, spend a lot of time out there. But no, personally, I have no allotments or anything like that. I'm just giving you a perspective of like how this stuff actually works on the ground. And I think people east of the divide, the continental divide, I think it's really hard for them to understand what dry means out here. It's like my partner's located in Iowa, and I was just out there visiting and looking at cows and stuff. And the brome grass was already up to like hip height in April. Well, even out here under an irrigated pivot, we might hit hip high brome in August. You know, it's just dry. It's dry and wet, and we can't run the same kind of stocking rate as we can in other places. So that is to say that the people that want the rancher to buy it need to understand that it's not Missouri. It doesn't produce enough revenue to cover the cost.
I see. Okay, so sorry. So I'm understanding. You're saying that, okay, can you kind of walk through the economics of this. If I understand what you're saying that right now it is cheaper for a small rancher to rent acres to graze on from the federal government versus buying those acres himself. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, it's not even close. Let's say the average guy, let's say the average guy is profiting somewhere around 500 by the time he's done calculating expenses on his cow or his beef rather. Okay, so let's say you can run 1,000 head. Let's see. And then let's see, 450. Apologize for doing
it's fine.
Idiot math over here. Okay. Let's say you were able to get that 450 at that 450,000 acres at 3,500 an acre. That's just kind of an average-ish, you know, it can change and can vary. So you're at $1.5 billion.
Wait. So sorry. So you're okay. Just really like break it down. These acreages you're talking about, we're talking about how many acres did you just say? 350?
I said 450, and I'm using a little bit of rhetoric here, but the point is
450 acres, you're saying, and you need
450,000.
So 450,000 acres.
Yeah.
And you're grazing 1,000 cattle on 450,000 acres.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like I say, I'm being a little hyperbolic. A lot of places your stocking rate's going to be closer to like 35 per, or maybe even a little less than that sometimes. But yeah, that's the math I was doing. Just to
so cattle need that many acres to graze.
Well, see, this is what I mean. The feed is sparse here. It's not like it is in Missouri where, you know, the fields look like a lawn. Out here, it's a desert. I mean, I wish I had a picture to pull up and show you. I'd show you.
So they got to go a long way to get the food they need. The cattle have to graze for a very long.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff out here is bunch grass, crested wheats, and things like that. Called bunch grass because it'll grow like in bunches and then it'll be separated. There's just not enough moisture to support a grass mat like a lot of people would picture. So it's a desert. A lot of this region where ranching is done on these BLM grounds goes between like 7 inches of annual precipitation to maybe 11.
So, and what's Missouri?
30?
Like 30, yeah. So way more. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. But is it really true? Like one cattle, just so I can understand the metric, how many in the West, how many acres does one cattle need in order to get what it needs?
It's going to depend on if you have irrigation. So we have to just push irrigation out of the equation. And then each piece is going to vary. The soil depends on how much alkali is in the soil, things like that. But I like to think of it as an average of 35. Some places are going to be more. My old man had a place that was deeded acres on the Nevada border when I was a kid, and we stopped running anything on it because it took 250 acres per pair to raise anything. Mm-hmm. So you end up in a lot of areas of Nevada, maybe they're not quite that extreme, but they're like that. You're going to see 100 acres per pair type stuff. So you think of how much ground you need to run a small operation.
So, but if it's 1 to 35 ish, why didn't you just say 1,000 on 450,000?
Well, yeah. These allotments are also managed. You're not. They kind of tell you how many you can put out, how long they can be out there, what dates. There'll be a date you can put them out, and then a date you have to bring them back. And if it's too dry, the range con will come to you and say, or can come to you and say, hey, you got to have them off by 2 weeks earlier. Because they're evaluating the foliage, or excuse me, the grass and stuff. So that is an allotment that I know of. I'm not saying that that's representative of the entire area.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I'm just learning like how this stuff even works. And so one of the things that Mike Lee is saying, or that people on his side is saying, is, oh, well, ranchers just buy the stuff yourself. Is that one of the things they're saying?
Total bullshit.
But it's total bullshit because it's just totally unaffordable. Like it would never be possible.
No, even right now with cattle prices as high as they are.
Yeah.
Even now, you're not going to. Maybe some people in some places could buy some of their stuff up, but no.
Yeah. Did you hear what's going on with the cattle in Point Reyes, California? There's a crazy story going on up there that I'm not familiar enough, but I think they're basically like the liberals of San Francisco who live in Marin County are basically kicking out all the cattle ranchers, because there's a bunch of cattle ranchers in this area, Marin County, that's like very beautiful, like north of San Francisco. And I think all the cattle ranchers are getting like pushed out. So everybody's trying to screw the cattle ranchers.
Oh yeah.
Right?
It's because this actually comes down to the same thing with public lands. The issue we fought for the last decade is the left used to be, they wanted to turn them into kind of a snow globe type thing. Like I've said elsewhere, maybe you could take like an electric train through it or something and look out a window, but otherwise you can't touch it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And now they want it to be solar panels and windmills, and then the right wanted to sell it. And I would argue that the reason the left was like that is not because they've ever, for the most part, I'm not talking about the granola hippies, some of them really believe, but the majority of the left doesn't actually care about the ecology at all, or the ecosystems at all. They just hate you.
Yeah. No. Well, that's what the cattle ranchers in Point Reyes have been saying. They're just like, this has nothing to do with anything besides they just don't like us. They don't like our way of life. They don't like what we are, and they don't want us to be in control of things because they want to be in control of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man.
No. Go. No, please go ahead.
Look at what they did in Colorado with the wolf reintroduction. The original wolf, the 94, 96 wolf reintroduction in the Yellowstone, the target number, if I'm recalling correctly, was 300 wolves. Colorado just wanted to put 500 in. And by the way, when these things get implemented, the goalpost always moves. So it'll go from 300 to 600. And part of the way they do that is they'll say, well, we can't really prove there's 300 wolves here. So we have to behave as if there's not 300 wolves. So in Colorado, they put a target number at 500, knowing that there's absolutely no way on earth they'll ever be able to prove that there are 500, wolves there. So they're just dumping wolves on these people and just because they hate them. I mean, ultimately that's why.
It's like, take these wolves. They're gonna attack you. Yeah. No. So what happened with those wolves? I'm not familiar with that story. What happened with the wolves?
It's kind of, there's a lot going on there. Some of them are dying. A lot of livestock are getting killed. It's just typical liberal policy stuff playing out in action.
The liberals literally set wolves on the on the people.
They did, yeah.
They literally released wolves onto the people, the Republicans of these places.
Yeah.
Well, so but then Mike Lee, if he's Mr. Republican based Mike Lee on Twitter, shouldn't he be worried? I mean, like, look, okay, fine. He's betrothed to BlackRock, and BlackRock wants to get their hands on the shit. I mean, they just want the capital, right? They want anybody wants capital that they can sink their teeth into. And Mike Lee's like, I got some capital for you, which is like, all right, whatever. That's the way it is. But shouldn't Mike Lee be like afraid, especially all this housing stuff? I'm with you that it's like once you start talking about building low income housing, yeah, that doesn't mean housing for teenagers. That means housing for like federally subsidized bullshit, semi-homeless, it's illegal immigrant bullshit. That's what that really means. Like low income, that's what that actually means in real life. So why doesn't Mike Lee understand that? Why doesn't he say, well, why is he out there shilling for putting housing up in these places? Does he have like an excuse for that?
Obviously, this is all just speculation. I don't know anything, but I think there's two things going on. I think one, probably kickbacks. That seems pretty obvious, right?
Well, yeah, sure, of course.
And then the second thing is, I think that first of all, he's a libertarian, is what he really is.
I see.
Okay. He may say he's not, but look at his behaviors and his focuses, and why is he teaming up with Kamala Harris to try to remove per country caps from H-1Bs?
Is he doing that?
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
he
did.
Damn it, Mike Lee. I thought you were based. What happened to based Mike Lee?
Man, you can go back and look through articles for 10 years where the left will praise this guy for reaching across the aisle on immigration in one way or the other.
An H-1B. He's an H-1B. Well, yeah, that's kind of a libertarian position, right?
I think so. So there's, so this is the way, I think that's his fundamental worldview is something like that. But I really think in his heart of hearts that he believes he's going to stand up against the tide and get this stuff sold off. And then one day history books are going to write about how great he was. Or like Utah will become a cosmopolitan, it'll be like a beautiful, like, oh, everybody's moving to Utah and here's our walkable city in Utah. Right. I think maybe, is that the other thing? Sure. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, it's also like, they just want to get the development going, which I can understand at some level, but it's also like, right, if these are precious, beautiful lands out there that are really something that is owned by the public, and then you're going to open it up, particularly in today's environment, it just seems like it's not going to end well. You're going to turn around and it's going to be a bunch of those horrible 5/1 disgusting condos. I don't know where you live, but I live in LA, so I have to see one of these come up every day. And it's like, that's what housing is today. Housing is not like it's like pretty much just like slave housing made with the cheapest possible materials, live, work, play, loft, plug in, have your LinkedIn bullshit job, your gym is in the building, just never leave the building, like, I feel like that's what's going to that is inevitably, if these are limited to housing, that's what this is going to become. And who's going to go live in those places? Definitely not Republicans, right? I mean, it's not going to be Republicans. And that's why I don't really get this from Mike Lee. It's like, Mike Lee, doesn't he know that that's what's going to happen? And then those people are just going to come in and vote him out, as you said.
Well, he knows. I don't think he cares that much about re-election. That's, again, these are just I'm just speculating here, but I don't think he cares that much about re-election. That's why he's doing this. Another thing that's happening all across the country, everywhere, is metropolitan areas are jettisoning their miscreants into rural areas because it's cheaper to house them. So they're taking their welfare people and sticking them in, say if you live in Utah, somewhere like, I don't know, Manti or Fillmore or something like that. And I would imagine that's part of what they're trying to do is offload, like, hey, what we really need are metropolises to be safer and cleaner. So let's just sacrifice.
Let's ship them just, a few miles over. No, that's definitely what's happening. That's really true. I just heard a story. I really can't say anything details at all about this, but it was in a state, and there was people doing exactly what you're saying, building low-income housing nearby a sort of like large metropolitan area, but not like just far enough outside that it wouldn't be part of the metropolitan area, right? And they're building low-income housing, and then it got burned down. The locals burned the whole fucking thing down because for this exact reason. No, because they're like, well, fuck that. Don't send your fucking city people here. We don't want that, especially if like you're going to be subsidizing these motherfuckers. I mean, and really it's like, but you do have to ask, like, where are these people going to work? Like say that we build low-income housing on public land, formerly public land in Utah. Where would the people even have jobs? Like, is there commerce around there? Like, I don't really get what problem it's solving. Like, how remote are these areas? Like, does it actually help anything? I don't know.
Some are extremely remote. If you build a data center and an H-1B village, then I guess that's where they're going to work. At least while they're building the nuclear plant and data center and whatever else. After that, I don't know what kind of manpower it takes. But on the whole, I would say they're not going to work. They don't care. You're going to work, right. And then you're going to pay for them. You're the tax,
right. And they're going to, what are they going to do? Like, what are they going to do in these like houses on public land?
Shoot fentanyl and bend over.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm a little more sympathetic to it if you like actually have a project. Like, if you're actually like doing something that's cool, like, if you actually come in and you're actually going to build something that is adding value, I'm a little more sympathetic to it. But if this is just to randomly give real estate developers deals to build shitty low-income housing, that doesn't seem good for anyone. Like, that doesn't seem, why would you even want that?
A couple of things. One, the developer is getting paid either way, right? So the developer is getting his money and the kickback's going to come either way if it were actually to go into completion. But my guess would be that these, once done, if this were to pass, when the contracts are formed, when the purchase time comes and developer goes to purchase it, that contract is going to have some stipulation in it. Again, this is just a guess that says, well, if we can't get this done within 6 years, then you can sell it to whoever you want. And then the developer will come in with a proposal that's total bullshit. And he'll say, how about if I build, make this thing an underground city and speedway. And then the zoning board is going to say, piss off, we're not doing that. And then there'll be an illegal battle for 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, whatever. And then they'll just sell it to the billionaire that they were going to sell it to the entire time.
Yeah. Okay. I see.
Perfect example, or again, rank speculation. A guy made this point on Twitter in my replies, and I thought it was a good one. Or at least something to ponder. Utah is hosting the Winter Olympics again in 2034.
Oh,
so if this were to go through and those contracts were to be structured in that way, well, that timing would line up pretty nicely with the Olympics.
Oh, I see. Okay. So this is like that kind of thing. Wow. Right. And then it's like I don't even know what would happen with it. Man, they do it all the way out until 2034. They've decided that. I didn't realize they did it that far in advance.
Yeah, that's my understanding. And if you're a Utahn, I grew up in southern Utah. I live in Idaho, but I grew up in southern Utah. If you're a Utahn that lived there prior to 2002, when they hosted the Winter Olympics, you saw what happened to your state.
What happened?
A ton of money came in. Sure. The Salt Lake Valley grew. The population of the state doubled. And now Salt Lake City is, I think, the second gayest, literally, second and figuratively, in the country.
Second gayest city in the country. Is there a ranking? Is there a ranking for this?
Wow.
No, there's no way. It can't possibly be the second gayest.
I think it is. Boise's the third, I bet.
Wow.
I'm teasing. I'm just talking shit.
They've gayed the West.
I don't know if I want
so
that in
funny.
my Google search, actually. I was going to.
Yeah, gayest city. Hey, dude, why were you searching for the gayest cities in America? Yeah. No, I mean, this is I wrote an article like a few years ago called "There's going to be a war in Montana." That was a little bit about Bozeman getting taken over by these exact forces. That we're talking about right now.
You mean like a cultural explosion kind of thing?
Well, the whole point of the article was just that, like, there's a new underclass out there, and it's like the underclass is just these like kind of white people, and that's not how it really used to be. And the people, and now it's like, again, yeah, every coffee shop has a rainbow flag on it.
Right.
And it's like, what the hell is this? This is not why people come to fucking Bozeman. Like, Bozeman's supposed to be not this. So why is it this? And it just shows who's really in control. It's like the hedge fund people are in control. They don't care. They love rainbow flags, right? Yeah. They want to put a rainbow flag on everything because it's just like, don't have kids, come here, spend money on your gay vacation, and, be a feminist who spends all her money shopping. It's like that. The rainbow flag just is exactly what they want. That's what they want there.
Yeah. Well, look at what they, on this note, look at what they've done. They ruined California, which I would argue is the most beautiful land in the world, not just even this country. Then they moved from there to Colorado, and they've totally ruined Colorado now. It's like, it's an unrecognizable place. And now they're going to Salt Lake, and these things, they're all ski resort places and all, there's a commonality here. Now they're going to Salt Lake, Park City, Provo, and Orem now. They're going to ruin that one. And then I guess they'll come here and build Twin Falls up, and Sun Valley will get even bigger. And then the little locust will scurry off to Big Sky, Montana, perhaps, or
no, Big Sky's fucked, really fucked. Big Sky's like one of the worst. I went there. That's a part of this piece. I think Big Sky's like super ski.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, Big Sky is totally developer rainbow flag, dude. In Big Sky, there's like women like riding bikes with helmets on and like pressing the button on the like crossing the street thing that like does the deaf people like screeching, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? like that they totally, it's like, no, Big Sky's fucked. No, but dude, you're right. I mean, I feel like the problem is, and you're right, like this is why we should be against this, because that's what we really don't want to have happen, is they come in and just fucking cuck these places. But I mean, the biggest problem, I don't even think it's like, I think it's just because the people don't live there. Like, it's just because the developers are in some totally other place. Like, they don't actually go to these places. So that's why they end up sucking, because the developers aren't there. So they're just taking whatever, we want a Starbucks. We want whatever, we want a Shake Shack, whatever big deal they can get, they just put in there. I don't know.
Yeah. The Mountain West has been run by developers for a very long time. They've always kind of been at least during my lifetime, they've always kind of been the power base. So there are large developers here. There's another piece of the push on this that's hard to talk about, because I really like Mormon people. They're my neighbors, friends, a whole crap load of my family. In fact, probably the majority of my family is LDS. And these guys, they catch shit from everybody all the time. They're always getting, maligned and picked on. And so I don't ever want to be that guy. But you have to look at who buys up a lot of this stuff, and the church buys up a lot of this stuff. So they're pushing on it too. And then, there are a lot of LDS developers that would stand to benefit. And it's not the faith that's the issue here. I'm just saying there are, I think the LDS is like the second largest single holding landowner or whatever, single company landowner. So they're probably pushing some of this as well. And that's the sort of the power base, at least in this Mormon corridor part. I'd say from Rexburg to Snowflake, Arizona type area. Mm-hmm. So some of the developers are here, and it's weird to watch. And I'm not saying these have anything to do necessarily with the church, but it's weird to watch them suck blood out of their community like leeches just to enrich themselves. Sure there are Californian. When I was a kid, we called anybody north of our county line a foreigner, so they would technically be foreigners too. Sure, there's Californian builders that come in, big companies, things like that, but there's a lot of local guys too.
There's a lot of local. Yeah, it's local stuff too. Wow, interesting. So, but then why do the local developers not do right by it?
They don't care. They get paid, man.
Right.
They get their money, and then they buy, whatever it is that they want, whether it's a private golf course or, private hunting area, whatever the hell it is. They buy that, and then they, I guess, get old and die. It's that boomer mentality.
Yeah. It's the ladder pulling generation.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say it's that entire generation. A lot of them fought Vietnam and were totally misused in that. There's some interesting parallels with the millennial generation, which I'm a early millennial, I guess. You've got, some of them that have blue hair, septum piercings, and break down in rage, mental illness rage when Trump wins an election. And then you've got the guys that are out starting businesses, whether it's in tech or whatever, and then fought the GWAT. I think it's more just the mentality of the boomer. I don't think it's all boomers. There are some pretty great ones. And I don't even mean like I'm trying to caveat it.
No, totally. Of course, it's not all of them. But it's just a weird, they have a certain like naivete. And yeah, but I do agree that the millennials are the flip side of the boomers. Yeah. It's like they're like the same, like opposite sides of the same coin kind of thing. I think that's true. Okay, so anything else to say about this debate? I know you had said something about a misleading video that Mike Lee had posted. So what was that? He
posted a video of Trump. And this is a really important point I want to drive home here. He posted a video of Trump saying there's so much land, we're going to take this land, we're going to build big, beautiful homes, the kind of Trump thing. And he said, see, even Trump is on board or something to that effect. Well, it turned out the video was from 2024 and it was talking about homes around Las Vegas. So he was trying to say that this was Trump commenting on his proposal, and it wasn't. It was a completely different thing. My assumption is that Lee is doing that because he's trying to surf on the wave of Trump's popularity. He's trying to kind of grift off of it. I hate that word. I shouldn't use that. He's trying to use Trump's popularity to push through a deeply unpopular thing, thinking that, hey, if I make it look like Trump believes in this, then maybe we can swing these MAGA people on this very terrible idea that will destroy their country.
Well, because it is kind of, that's why this is such an interesting issue, because I have this theory that the soul of MAGA is this kind of kulak. This is from having been to several Trump rallies and like Trump events. There's this like kulak vibe. But what I mean by that is like, there's like fundamentally Trump appeals to every American that believes in sort of the American dream of like starting your own thing, which is pretty like deeply ingrained in Americans. And so, and I think that the reason he's a unifier of people of all different races and everybody loves Trump. Like so many different people love Trump. And I think it's because he appeals to that like desire to like, have nice shit because you put in the work, and you're not full of shit. You're just going to say what you want because you know what? I put in the work. I am talented. I do my thing. And I feel like that's like kind of like an American Kulak thing of like, we believe in people who can start their own stuff. And this particular issue, I can see how Mike Lee would make it Trumpy to sell these lands, because I think that like commerce is sort of at the core of Trumpism. It's kind of at like the core of MAGAism, is like deals. Like, let's make deals, right? And preserving land is kind of like it. And I realize this is not preserving land, but it's kind of like the opposite of like, let's make a deal, sort of.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I also think I went to the Trump rally in Bozeman. It was great. The people were fantastic. I brought my kids. It was great. You know,
Yeah.
and journos lied about it. You know, big shock. Well, there was only 5,000 people there. Dude, there was like 20,000 people in Bozeman, Montana at that thing. And they were all nice and happy. These grandmas like waving at kids. You know, it's rare anymore. I don't know if you have kids.
I do. I have two.
Okay. So, you know, you go out, if you go to town and go to a restaurant or whatever, it's not this way necessarily up here, but if you're in a city, people look at you like you've brought some kind of little vagrant in with you, you know. A lot of people hate them. Well, at the Trump's rally, it was total opposite of that. Everyone's waving at our kids and, you know, nice and polite and sweet, happy, good vibes and so on. That part, I think, is because Trump is the first politician in my lifetime that obviously didn't hate me and my people. You know, like George Bush Jr. tried to do that kind of everyman thing, but he didn't really have it. You know, I think that's why he sacrificed half of my generation in a stupid ass war. But Trump, I think, has that. I think he genuinely doesn't hate us. And I would argue somebody like Tucker, that's why he is as resilient as he is, because he has that same vibe. He doesn't hate you. And that's a very powerful thing. So I think that Lee is trying to pit this argument fight should be framed, in my view, as that MAGA Kulak, whatever you want to call it, base, Trump's base, and Trump against Mike Lee and this terrible idea. And Mike Lee is kind of trying to put Trump as a wedge in between that and he. Yeah.
I think that's exactly what's happening. Yeah.
I understand that Trump's a developer. I understand that Burgum's a developer. Right. I know that there were bad signs up front, but Trump has shown that he responds to his base when they freak out. So I think without Mike Lee pushing here, Trump may, people have been so mad. Every time I open the timeline, there's some MAGA thought leader type. You know, since Anons run the country, it's usually an Anon, you know, tweeting something very smart and cutting at Mike Lee. It's just all day long. This is a terrible idea and you suck. And then, of course, there's other ones calling him F words and things like that. But
so wait, has Trump said anything about it yet?
I haven't seen him comment on it. Maybe he has and I've just missed it, but I haven't.
So we need to wait to see what Trump basically says about this.
Yeah, and also keep chimping out so that he understands.
So that he understands.
Yeah,
well, yeah, but see, I agree. But chimping is good. Like, this is why I like people got all pissed when people were chimping about Trump invading Iran. I'm like, chimp, let him know what it's, you know, you don't have to like call Trump names, but like, you know, I feel like chimping is, I don't know. What did you think of that? Do you think we should invade Iran? Do you think, or not invade? Did you think we should bomb Iran?
No, hell no, man. I'm done with these stupid ass wars. No.
Yeah. So, but people were like, we were saying like, hey, don't bomb Iran. And people were like, don't talk to Trump that way. And it was like, well, wait a second. Hold on. We got to be able to like say when he's making a mistake. Yeah. So no, I agree. People should be chimping here. And we basically just got to wait to see what Trump does and like says about this. I wonder what his position is. Because I feel like he could go either way. Kind of.
Yeah, I kind of do too.
Yeah.
I would caution people against attacking him on it, but definitely let him know that you think this is a terrible thing.
Yeah.
You know, people have responded to me on there and have said things like, "You're an idiot. You voted for a developer. This is your fault. You voted for Trump." You know, this is a typical kind of liberal reply, and I understand where they're coming from. This is my central issue and has been forever. But the other option was import 1,100 million illegals and have a president that wants to take my sons away from me and cut their genitals off.
Yeah, it was not an option. And I'll tell you, if the same thing would have happened anyway, it just would have been, the news wouldn't have covered it. Right.
Yeah,
I mean, they would have made the deal. They would have sold the land, and it would have been like, oh, we're making it's for low income. It's low income people. We need housing. We have a housing crisis. You know, they would have just said that, and it would have been the same thing.
Biden's admin in the first month in office signed the 30 by 30 initiative that was written by the Nature Conservancy, and the 30 by 30 initiative was the goal ostensibly was to lock up 30% of America's land. For conservation and preservation, total vagaries, never made any, and it was going to be done with public-private partnerships. But if you read deeper, the final or ultimate goal was to lock up 50% of America's land and water by the year 2050. Now, had this plan been put forth by somebody that I feel like had gutted an elk and carried it off a mountain one day in his life, I'd be a lot more trustworthy or trusting of this. But since it was written by Udall and Deb Holland and the Nature Conservancy, I have a pretty good idea of what they were attempting to do. And that was a land heist of a different kind. So you're right to say it would have happened either way. At least this way, we have a chance to win.
Right. Well, somebody's asking you, how do you eat pizza with your mustache?
I don't actually eat pizza. It is pretty bad right now. Somebody told me I look like the caddy from Happy Gilmore the other day.
It's a good way to not eat pizza. Just have the mustache, and you can't eat pizza, so you stay healthy. Okay. Well, well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this and for laying out the issue. What's your next book going to be about? Let's talk about that for a second.
It's funny. The book started as a project to try to lay out my case for the ethnogenesis of what the American people. And I was trying to do that.
Nice.
It kind of got too big. I'm an idiot and a rambler. So I thought, okay, I can do this in 300 pages. And then pretty soon I could tell no one's going to read a volume set from an idiot like me. Right. So wasn't going to work out. So now I'm breaking it up into different pieces. I had an agent reach out and ask me about 6 months ago if I'd be willing to do a book about public lands. So it's actually about public lands. Ultimately will be about how we got them, why they're so important, and so on. And I'm trying to kind of grind that out right now. I think I may put out for really cheap. A friend of mine that's a professor and I are going to kind of try to line out a bunch of talking points so people can understand the public lands issue in just a small pamphlet, and then just post it somewhere, $3 or something on Amazon just to get it into people's hands. So I might try to get that done and then move on to the public lands book.
Okay, so you're going to do a pamphlet and then public lands. So what would you say? What is if you were doing that pamphlet and it's like for kids, it's like, anybody can understand it. What are the top 10 reasons? What are the main reasons that you would tell to a child? Here's why you need to care about public lands.
First of all, they're yours, and this is one of the only places in the world that is like this. Yeah, Germany has in terms of percentage, about the same amount of quote unquote public land, but the restrictions are completely different. You can't just go roam wherever you want, do whatever you want, 4-wheel, or, if you're one of these rock crawler types, you can go crawl rocks. You can't do that kind of stuff in these other countries. So firstly, I would say you need to recognize how unique this is. It's funny, they were saying the other day, Elon was tweeting no gods, no kings or whatever, and yet he wants to lord over our crown jewel as a king. It's like, hey man, we're all kind of little petty kings around here. This is ours. So that would be point one. This is ours. Two, from
it's ours, and that's very unique in the world. I think that's the important part of that, because we always hear is this land is your land. Like the communists saying that shit. It's not just that it's yours. It's that this is unprecedented. There really is nothing like this in the world. Like, yeah, Europe, you don't get this in Europe. It's like, yeah. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
No, you're right. It's here in Canada, basically, are the two places. And Canada, look at what they're doing with their stuff. I mean, they still have a lot of the same things going on for them that we do, but the liberals control hunting up there to such a degree that now they're getting restricted in all kinds of silly ways. So yes, it's unique. It's yours would be my, most important. It's unique and it's yours. And then the second would be stop viewing this as something that is just an asset on a balance sheet, because I would argue the most important things in life don't really look great. They don't really their fullness does not show up in Excel, right? Like think of the love you have for your children. How do you quantify that?
Right.
You can't. So stop viewing it that way, because it is way more important and cosmically than something that shows up in Excel. And then thirdly, this is just my personal view, I guess. And I don't want to pretend to be overly pious. I always feel weird even mentioning things like this, but from my perspective, God told us to be stewards of the earth, not to rape and pillage. That doesn't mean you can't do extraction and things like this responsibly, but it certainly means don't clear cut a redwood forest, or let an animal like mule deer die off. They only exist here in the Rocky Mountains. Well, in this general region. Don't let them die off. Populations of mule deer are in decline across the entire region.
Mule deer. What's a mule deer?
It's a buck. I mean, what do you mean by what's a? You mean like how did it?
No, but like why? They're just rare. They're like a rare type of deer.
Well, yeah. I mean, they only exist here. My understanding of the evolution of mule deer was they were whitetail in the east, and then they at one point in time diverged, and they became kind of blacktail in the west, and then here in this intermediary zone, they sort of rebred and became this mule deer species. I think the divergence was around 13,000 years ago, or right around the end of the Pleistocene. I could be getting those numbers wrong, but that's what a mule deer is, and they're dying off everywhere, and they're emblematic of this region. Everyone from here loves them.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm looking at pictures. These are cool looking.
They're way cool. And they're yours.
Yeah, and they're yours. Yeah, okay. Let me ask you this. Say that there was some way to do this in a way where we could absolutely prevent it from being corporations that got involved in it, and it was genuine real life settler era homesteading, where it was like, come out here, build your house, and that's it. Like, I don't know how they achieved that before in the West, right? Because they did do that. I mean, that's how the West was obviously settled. Mm-hmm. Like, would you be in favor of that? Like, if you could make it so that it was genuinely just like you or anybody could just go off into it and build a house and like homestead, would you be in favor of that?
I get this objection a lot, and I understand where it's coming from. And I think the thing that I do like about it is the people that make it are coming from a good place. So that up front, no, I wouldn't. We've already done this, I think, 10 different ways, timber extraction acts, homestead acts. We've already tried this, and that's how we ended up with the BLM where it is. And we need to remember that there's no water, man. There's no water. In some places there are, but in a lot of these areas, they're not. So a guy that I'm friendly with and that I really like, he was saying, well, why don't we do these little homesteads that are like 5-10 acres and people can grow their own chickens?
Yeah,
whatever.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
There's a couple things there. One, I don't know where you're going to get the water for that. Say you wanted to there's a place in southern Utah that I wanted to see if I could get some ground to do some wintering, because it would have helped. I could not get a well permit. It's not possible. So unless you're a millionaire, you can't even get a well. They won't give you water, so you can't do that. And then even if you could grid it off in 5-10 acre sections, these animals are migratory. So you just built a series of hurdles across their winter range, you're just going to destroy the entire ecosystem and wipe it out, kill these species off. And then lastly on that, that privatization is still taking it from the American public. When Teddy when he first gave his famous speech about this, he had a really good line in there. And I'm paraphrasing, but he said, we're going to protect this for the people present today and for those yet in the womb of time. This conservation ethos is it's not just ours. It actually belongs to the next generation, and you are just the steward of it now.
So that's Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, he said, that's where the yet in the womb of time thing came from. Yeah,
that's a good book title right there, The Womb of Time. So Teddy was the one who did this. Teddy was the one who originally took these lands off the market.
He's definitely the loudest voice. I mean, Audubon and some other people were involved, Muir and stuff like that. But I would say he's the loudest voice on it.
Okay.
Edward Abbey, by the way, had a great line for people like Mike Lee. Have you ever read any of Edward Abbey's
Yeah, I read Desert Solitaire. It's pretty good. Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
He said, growth for the sake of growth is the mindset of a cancer cell.
Yeah, and that's true. Growth for the sake of growth is the mindset of a cancer cell. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, so I think that's a very important point that you just raised, that it's not just it's like, yeah, I think a lot of people think, oh, well, it is giving it to the American people because you're just giving them the chance to come and settle there, and you're opening up more ownable land to a lower level homeowner, right? Because dude, this is something that I hear all the time from people around me. The housing prices right now are completely unmoored from reality. Yes. Like the amount that a house costs in Austin or anywhere has nothing to do with reality at all. It is completely fake. So it's like, oh, here's a $9 million house. Like nobody ever could afford that. So I feel like it is an appealing argument to say, all right, well, we're going to open up a bunch of acres over here that people can own. But what you're saying, just to help your argument, is you're not going to own that. Because you can't, it's cost $1 million to get a well. These lands are not going to be developed by ordinary people. They're going to be developed by huge corporations, and they're going to suck. I mean, you're kind of saying that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that is what will happen ultimately. And homesteads, I think the turnover on homesteads, even in places that have the water and stuff for it, is like about 2 years, people were kind of done with it.
Right.
So imagine what happens if you were to push this through 2, 5, 10 years down the road. Now you've got all these little homesteads that just got aggregated by the same person anyway. Right. So you're accomplishing the same thing, but just on a prolonged time scale.
Why don't people stay in the homesteads?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's hard to make money. I mean, I would assume you have to have another form of income in order.
Right. You got to have like a big income because you got to build a bunch of stuff up. Right. And you got to get all the rights to these things. Yeah. So I think it's like, practically speaking, these are not possible to have as homesteads. Like it's gonna get aggregated by someone very quickly because it's just not practical.
That's what already happened to the original homesteads.
Yeah. Wait, what do you mean?
Well, that's how Simplot, for example, and I'm not even like trying to be mean to them, but that's how they got so big.
Who is it?
It's a big corporate ag corporation here that's more local to the area. That's what the ranches today are. A lot of them that are running on deeded acres, they used to be homesteads. You can look at them and see the old homestead plots, but they've just been aggregated over time. Now that's way better when it's a family, but it's not always, that person said,
you got to make an OnlyFans homestead full of hot rich chicks. Yeah, that's what you got to do. OnlyFans homesteads. I'm happy. I'm down to sell it if it can be OnlyFans homesteading. Just hype house influencer the homesteads across the West.
In case my computer dies, can I address the redwood forest thing?
Yes, of course. Please.
I was just using rhetoric. I'm not saying that Mike Lee actually walked out and advocated that we go cut down all of the redwood trees,
Yeah.
Although I don't think he would care if we did.
Are there redwoods there's not redwoods in Utah, is there?
No.
Yeah, I think it's only California. We have one in our backyard. It's very nice. Okay. Cool, man. Well, dude, thank you so much. Thank you. This is really great. Excited for your book. Read The Glass. It's The Glass.
The Glass Factory.
The Glass Factory. Great name for a book, by the way.
No, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna order this. This will be our next episode. Oh, wow, cool cover too. It's a great cover. Who made this cover?
One of the medics that worked on me in country made that, which is pretty cool.
Whoa. See, the best designs always come from random places. That is a great book cover. Thanks. Cool, man. Well, yeah. Well, I got to read this book. This sounds really cool. Did you just self-publish this, or did you have some?
Yeah, we did. We did end up self-publishing it. By the time we got to when we were about to, we pitched some other publishers. Big publishers didn't care. If you're not a SEAL, they don't print your book.
Right. Yeah, they want the SEALs only.
By the time we got ready to print, some mid-tier houses wanted it, but I didn't see what benefit I would get from that, so I just hired an editor and did it ourselves.
Totally, man. Awesome, dude. Well, yeah, so great to meet you, Braxton, and yeah, stay in touch, and I'll be releasing this episode. This is just the stream version, but it'll go on all the platforms, and you can share it when it's up.
Okay, thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, man.
Take care.
Peace.
See ya.